I mean, to be totally frank, almost every conspiracy theory that people had about Twitter turned out to be true. So, like, is there a conspiracy theory about Twitter that didn't turn out to be true? So far, they've all turned out to be true, and if not, more true than people thought.
All right, guys. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When people on the right or conservatives make claims, it is deemed a conspiracy theory until it is eventually proven to be a fact, right? When people on the left make claims, or Democrats make claims, it is deemed a fact until it eventually is proven to be a conspiracy theory. That is the best way I can describe our modern day discourse when it comes to politics. What is true and what is not true. And conservatives have been proven to be right time and time again, okay? Despite being conspiracy theorists. And the left has been proven to be conspiracy theorists, even though they claim to be the arbiters of truth. And even when the left is confronted with facts and evidence that they are wrong, okay, or that the right was correct, right? Our conspiracy theories were correct. The left deflects and they says, no, you're still a conspiracy theorist, right? You're still peddling misinformation / disinformation. Take, for example, the Twitter files, which reveal that Twitter basically became a subsidiary of the FBI. And there's facts and evidence, emails, right, to back this up. And the FBI says, no, you are a conspiracy theorist if you believe that we were trying to pressure and influence Twitter to censor people based off political opinions.
Alert now, we are getting our first response from the FBI to the Twitter file dumps. The statement reads, the correspondence between the FBI and Twitter show nothing more than examples of our traditional, long-standing and ongoing federal government and private sector engagements, which involve numerous companies over multiple sectors and industries. As evidenced in the correspondence, the FBI provides critical information to the private sector in an effort to allow them to protect themselves and their customers. The men and women of the FBI work every day to protect the American public. It is unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency.
Yeah, incredible stuff, right? Absolutely incredible stuff. Even when presented with evidence that, hey, the FBI is involved in this type of stuff, they paid off Twitter to censor people. Oh, no, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're peddling misinformation, disinformation, whatever, right? Again, this is just what the left does. This is what they do. They smear people with names and labels as a way to discredit them, even when, again, they're just clearly wrong. So, we have a new Twitter file. I guess this is what, Twitter file part 10 or something like that. That exposes another situation, another case of the left peddling facts that ultimately were not actual facts. They were actually conspiracies, and how they pressure big tech to censor people based off the propaganda / conspiracies that the left was pushing, that was not grounded in any truth or science or anything like that, because they don't believe in actual debate, right? They don't believe in debate. All they want is power and control. So with that being said, this new Twitter file is by David Zweig, which talks about COVID and how Twitter rigged the COVID debate, right? So let's read about this. Let's get into it. Twitter files, how Twitter rigged the COVID debate by censoring the information that was true but inconvenient to U.S. government policy, by discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed, by suppressing ordinary users, including some sharing the CDC's own data. I love the fact that Elon Musk is allowing this to be disseminated through these independent journalists, because I think that this is an important way to give them some clout and more just public recognition. And I think that is a good way to counter the mainstream liberal media. So I actually like what Elon Musk is doing here. So let's read here. So far, the Twitter files have focused on evidence of Twitter's secret blacklist, how the company functioned as a kind of subsidiary of the FBI, and how executives rewrote the platform's rules to accommodate their own political desires. What we have yet to cover is COVID. This reporting for the Free Press is one piece of that important story. The United States government pressured Twitter and other social media platforms to elevate certain content and suppress other content about COVID-19. Internal files at Twitter that I viewed while on assignment for the Free Press showed that both the Trump and Biden administrations directly pressed Twitter executives to moderate the platform's pandemic content according to their wishes. At the onset of the pandemic, according to meeting notes, the Trump administration was especially concerned about panic buying. They came looking for help from the tech companies to combat misinformation about runs on grocery stores, but there were runs on grocery stores. Yeah, so the Trump administration wasn't necessarily concerned about censoring public health information about COVID itself, but more about the fact that people were going on grocery store runs, buying all this stuff, which basically made it so more people would do that, and then there would be no supplies left, right? Like, for example, you guys remember the toilet paper crisis of 2020, okay? Yeah, everybody remembers that. He was, I guess, trying to stop that. Again, doesn't make it right. I'm not saying it's right for him to do that, but again, that's what he was trying to do. It wasn't just Twitter. The meetings with the Trump White House were also attended by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and others. When Biden administration took over, one of their first meeting requests with Twitter executives was on COVID. The focus was on, quote, anti-vaxxer accounts, especially Alex Berenson. In the summer of 2021, President Biden said social media companies were killing people for allowing vaccine misinformation. Berenson was suspended hours after Biden's comments and kicked off the platform the following month. Berenson sued and then settled with Twitter. In the legal process, Twitter was compelled to release certain internal communications, which showed direct White House pressure on the company to take action on Berenson. Yeah, so the White House, basically, the Biden White House pressured Twitter to censor individuals who were anti-vaxxers, okay? This is what they did, and Twitter capitulated. A December 2022 summary of meetings with the White House by Lauren Cumberson, Twitter's head of U.S. public policy, adds new evidence of the White House's pressure campaign and submits that it repeatedly attempted to directly influence the platform. Cumberson wrote that the Biden team was very angry that Twitter had not been more aggressive in deplatforming multiple accounts. They wanted Twitter to do more. Twitter executives did not fully capitulate to the Biden team's wishes. An extensive review of internal communications at the company revealed employees often debating moderation cases in great detail and with more care than was shown by the government toward free speech. Yeah, because the Biden administration doesn't believe in free speech at all, right? They only believe in adherence to their point of view and their narrative, and that's it. But Twitter did suppress views, many from doctors and scientific experts, that conflicted with the official positions of the White House. As a result, legitimate findings and questions that would have expanded the public debate went missing. There was 3 serious problems with Twitter's process. First, much of the content moderation was conducted by bots trained on machine learning and AI, impressive in their engineering, yet still too crude for such nuanced work. Second, contractors in places like the Philippines also moderated content. They were given decision trees to aid in the process, but tasking non-experts to adjudicate tweets on complex topics like myocarditis and mask efficacy data was destined for a significant error rate. Yeah, and this is an argument that I've made for a long, long time, that these social media companies are just simply not equipped to be the arbiters of truth when it comes to scientific and medical misinformation, right? Because this stuff changes all the time, and the average person looking at this stuff and trying to moderate content based off medical information, they simply don't know enough, right? They don't know enough, and they're probably not keeping up with the news and the information that's evolving over time. The policies are not going to be able to keep up as well either, right? And that's the problem, okay? That's the problem. Again, in Twitter's case, you had, random people in the Philippines telling you that, hey, you're putting out information that's incorrect or misinformation about COVID. It's kind of crazy. Third, most importantly, the buck stopped with higher level employees at Twitter who chose the inputs for the bots and decision trees and subjectively decided escalated cases and suspensions. As it is with all people and institutions, there was individual and collective bias. With COVID, this bias bit heavily toward establishment dogmas, obviously, right? Obviously, it didn't bend towards the science. It bent towards the establishment. Inevitably, dissident yet legitimate content was labeled as misinformation, and the accounts of doctors and others were suspended, both for tweeting opinions and demonstrably true information. Exhibit A. Dr. Martin Kudoff, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School, tweeted views at odds with U.S. public health authorities and the American left, the political affiliation of nearly the entire staff at Twitter. Now, this guy had basically argued that the COVID-19 vaccines are important for older people and high-risk people. However, people, who've been infected with COVID before or children, it wasn't necessarily as important for them, right? That is what he was arguing. And apparently they're trying to say that this is misinformation, right? They had a problem with that. Internal emails show an intent to action by a moderator saying Kordoff's tweets violated the company's COVID-19 misinformation policy and claimed he shared false information. But Kordoff's statement was an expert's opinion, one which also happened to be in line with vaccine policies in numerous other countries, yet it was deemed false information by Twitter moderators merely because it differed from CDC guidelines. Yeah, it went against the government, right? Even though this guy's a scientist, a legitimate scientist from Harvard Medical School, if you don't go along with the government, you should be censored, right? Absolutely amazing. After Twitter took action, Kordoff's tweet was slapped with a misleading label, and all replies and likes were shut off, throttling the tweet's ability to be seen and shared by many people, the ostensible core function of the platform. In my review of internal files, I found countless instances of tweets labeled as misleading or taken down entirely, sometimes triggering account suspensions simply because they veered from CDC guidance or different from establishment views. A tweet by Kelly KGA, a self-proclaimed public health fact checker with 18,000 followers, was flagged as misleading and replies and likes disabled, even though it displayed the CDC's own data. Internal records show that a bot had flagged the tweet and that it received many tattles, what the system amusingly calls reports from users that trigger a manual review by a human, despite the tweet showing actual CDC data, nonetheless label it misleading. Again, I guarantee you, whoever that human that reviewed this tweet was, they're not a medical expert, right? They don't know nearly as much as, some of the medical professionals that they are trying to correct or say that what they're saying is misleading. Tellingly, the tweet by Kelly KGA that was labeled misleading was a reply to a tweet that contained actual misinformation. COVID has never been the leading cause of death from disease in children, yet that tweet remains on the platform and without a misleading label. Yeah, shows you how much of a clown show this was and why, again, this can't work, right? This doesn't work. Whether by humans or algorithms, content that was contrarian but true was still subject to getting flagged or suppressed. This tweet was labeled misleading, even though the owner of this content, a physician, was referring to the results of a published study. Andrew Boston, a Rhode Island physician, was permanently suspended from Twitter after receiving multiple strikes for misinformation. One of his strikes was for a tweet referring to the results from a peer-reviewed study on mRNA vaccines. A review of Twitter log files revealed that an internal audit conducted after Boston's attorney contacted Twitter found that one of Boston's 5 violations were valid. The one Boston tweet to still be found in violation cited data that was legitimate but inconvenient to public health establishment's narrative about the risk of flu versus COVID in children. That this tweet was not only flagged by a bot, but its violation manually affirmed by a staff member is telling of both algorithmic and human bias at play. Boston's account was suspended for months and was finally restored on Christmas Day. Another example of human biases run amok was the reaction to this tweet by Trump. Many Trump tweets led to extensive internal debates, and this one was no different. So this is Trump basically saying, don't be afraid of COVID, right? After he got COVID and left the hospital, right? He said, don't let it dominate your life. Okay. He also, talked about the drugs and the stuff like that they've developed to help with the virus. And apparently this triggered people, including the FBI's plant at Twitter, Jim Baker, right? In a surreal exchange, Jim Baker, at the time Twitter's deputy general counsel, asked why telling people to not be afraid wasn't a violation of Twitter's COVID-19 misinformation policy, right? So this dude is saying Trump telling people, hey, don't be afraid of COVID. Apparently that's a violation of Twitter's misinformation policy, according to the FBI guy. Incredible. Is everybody in the government and in big tech left-wing activists, right? Is that what it is at this point? Yoel Roth, Twitter's former head of trust and safety, had to explain that optimism wasn't misinformation. Yeah, so the guy with Trump derangement syndrome had to explain to the former FBI guy that optimism is not misinformation. Again, it's a shame. It's absolutely incredible. Remember Kelly KJA with the CDC data tweet. Twitter's response to her is clarifying, quote, we will prioritize review and label of content that could lead to increased exposure or transmission. Twitter made a decision via the political leanings of senior staff and government pressure that the public health authorities' approach to the pandemic, prioritizing mitigation over other concerns, was the science. Information that challenged that view, such as showing harms of vaccines or that could be perceived as downplaying the risk of COVID, especially to children, was subject to moderation or even suppression, no matter whether such views were correct or adopted abroad. What might the pandemic and its aftermath have looked like if there had been more open debate on Twitter and other social media platforms, not to mention the mainstream press, about the origins of COVID, about lockdowns, about the true risk of COVID in kids, and much more? What would have happened was that people would have been less likely to go along with certain things and certain agendas, like, for example, the lockdowns, the school closures, masks, getting vaccinated. That's what would have happened. And what would have happened is that would have been a threat to the power of the Democrat Party in the government, right? And that is why they were so hell-bent on making sure that everybody went along with the narrative, regardless of whether or not the narrative was actually grounded in any facts or reality. It didn't matter. Simply, it was a means of control. It was a means of accumulating power. That's what it's about. It's not about facts, not about science, not about the data. It's about power. And that is the takeaway here in regards to the censorship that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? They didn't really care about your health. What they really cared about is keeping you under control. That's what it was about. The government never will not take an opportunity to seize more power and control over people. And that's what they saw the COVID pandemic as. It was a golden opportunity for them to accumulate more power. And that's what they did, right? And anybody that got in their way, even if you were a scientist, right, or an actual real public health expert, you were deemed a conspiracy theorist, a anti-vaxxer, whatever, right? Anti-science. You were deemed all that stuff. And they used big tech as a way to try to silence people who, again, disagree with the regime. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.